You're watching the YouTube version of the We Are Innovation podcast. Join us as we explore how innovation, new technologies, and human creativity improve our lives. The future is calling.
Hi, I'm Federico Fernández. Welcome to a new episode of the We Are Innovation podcast. Today, we're going to talk about tax optimization, asset protection, and how to maximize your personal freedom via global mobility and internationalization. And for that, I am accompanied by Danilo Silva. Danilo is a neuroscientist and behavioral economist with a degree in psychology from PUC-Rio. He is a polyglot who has lived and worked in countries such as Germany, France, Portugal, and Estonia until joining Settee in 2021. He has been a nomad for 7 years, and he's a specialist in Eastern Europe and the Balkans, having visited most of the countries in that region. Online, you can find him on LinkedIn and on the Settee website. I'm going to link both links in the description of the episode. Danilo, welcome to the We Are Innovation podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to be talking to you again, Federico.
Happy to see you. Happy New Year, because we are recording this episode at the beginning of 2024. And I wanted to ask you, given we'll go in, let's say, we'll delve with what you are doing, with what Settee is doing. But I find quite interesting, let's say, your journey, in the sense from being a neuroscientist and a behavioral economist to joining Settee. Can you tell us about that? What made you make that decision, and how was it?
Well, it's mostly about opportunity, being in the right place at the right time, It's my actual job nowadays is not that different from the occupation I had in Brazil. Before I left Brazil, I was a rater. Basically, I was the psychologist. I was not a therapist. That's what I'm saying. I was the person that would evaluate, run some tests, and I'll give a diagnostic hypothesis, share conditions, and then I would send you to the proper specialist, be it a neurologist, psychiatrist, another psychologist, endocrinologist, or whatever you may need. So that's basically what I did back then. And nowadays, what I do with my clients is basically have a talk with them, have a chat, and try to understand exactly what they need, what their points of pain, and try to recommend solutions in different countries. We do a lot of things about flag theory. We're gonna go about that more in detail, but the simple idea is that you don't need to have all the eggs in the same basket. You can cherry pick the country is the better suits your needs. So the summary is that is just go where you are better treated. And to answer the part about how did I come here, well, it's basically because I was living in Estonia. Our company was based in Estonia at the time, and Francisco, the co-director of the company alongside me, he needed exactly someone with my profile living in Estonia to make the compliance part of the company. And Simon, a friend of mine from Macedonia, he knew Francisco. Francisco was talking about it. Oh, I would like to have someone with this profile. Just, yes, I know someone like that, and just recommended me to join. And then we started this 3 years journey into this fantastic business we have.
Yes, and for what you were saying, Danilo, it seems that, let's say, your background in psychology has influence, or it has some of the, let's say, has some similarities to what you are doing now with your previous work.
Oh, for sure. It's really about understanding people and try to understand exactly, because there's a lot about what's not said. It's try to understand what's people really mean. It's not just what's their face value. So having this bit sensibility to be able to really connect with people and trust, also to gain their trust, something that you need in both situations, being a psychologist, being like a consultant, to people to be really feel comfortable to really say about the things that are bothering them.
And you mentioned briefly a few minutes ago the flag theory, which is, let's say, it's I would say, like the cornerstone probably of what you are doing at Settee. What can you tell us about it? How does it guide, let's say, Settee services? Tell us. Feel free to explain, as with the length you want.
I mean, if it could be practical to maybe share exactly my setup, because I'm Brazilian. Brazil is a fantastic country because people really like Brazilians wherever I go in most countries, especially here in Eastern Europe. And I believe with Argentinians is very similar. Our passports are as strong as about the same level of accessibility throughout the world. I can go to 80% of the countries of the world without needing a visa. It's a very strong passport. And every time people meet, especially here in Eastern Europe, someone from South America, they are more open. They're just like, oh, yeah, South America, yes. They just think about our music, how warm people in our countries are. And that already like breaks the ice immediately. So this first flag of being like the nationality is a very strong one for Brazil. But Brazil is not exactly, and same for you as well, right? Argentina is not exactly the better country right now. Maybe it'll get better, hopefully, for having a business, to have a bank account, to invest. But you don't need to be constrained by the conditions you were born with. You can have your business in the US, you can have a bank account in Georgia, you can invest in, let's say, in the UAE, and you can just live in Malta in the meantime. What's the better setup for you? Of course, it's a very personal decision. The tax planning part is actually, I would say, if you're flexible to travel, to change countries, the tax optimization part is the easy part because at least one option at every continent that you could choose to like lower your taxes. So in the end, it really boils down to personal preferences, what type of life you want to live, what type of like freedom you want to optimize. There are people that are more concerned about gun rights. So Paraguay, for example, Uruguay are very good options for that. Maybe you want like illegal marijuana. Uruguay is also an option for that. The Netherlands and so many other options out there. Homeschooling, and whatever else you might, people that want to like seastead or homestead, we can address all those needs. It just really comes down to understand you as a human and what you really, really want to accomplish.
Can you translate this into a success story, examples of client? Of course, keeping their privacy, but can you tell us a little bit of how what you're doing, the kind of work you're doing at Settee has impacted on the life of your of some of your clients?
Oh, absolutely. There's some stories, for example, of this client that we had. He used to live in Germany. I mean, Germany is not a tax haven. That's no secret to anybody. But I mean, it's still a country that pays really well. Typically, sadly, you have this almost correlation that the countries that pay the best, they have the highest salaries, also have the highest taxes, the highest cost of living, and so forth. So that was the situation he encountered himself at. And eventually, there was a job opportunity that he got in Prague, just next door. Was not the biggest salary, but he didn't like the direction Germany was going. He was had a kid in the way, so he thought maybe that's not the place I want to raise my children. That's not the values I want to pass on. So maybe that's a next door could go to a country that to fit my worldviews best. So he decided to take the pay cut, decided to take a different position in a different place, was more interesting for them as well. But then trying to figure out the math of it, like taxes in Czech Republic are a lot better than in Germany. So, and also cost of living. So in the end, despite having a lower salary, he was able to have more money in the bank at the end of the month. And on top of that, he was able to maximize, had better gun rights, better options for homeschooling, a bit more freedom about what he does with his money, and overall it's like his life is better in every way. So it's one example. There are some things that might be a bit under the radar because if you just focus on just, oh, my salary is bigger here, you might be missing out on a lot of opportunities. Especially when you become a nomad. As a nomad, you might be taking like half the pay you get, but because you're able to stay, for example, in say, let me think about a very sunny place that's also cheap to live. Let's say you go to Honduras. They have the private city of Prospera there, like perfect weather the entire year. You could live very well, very comfortably with like $200 a month for an apartment. So despite earning like $2,000 less a month, because you don't have to spend that much money in taxes and with bad buses and just having to go to Uber for everywhere, you can just like enjoy your life while you're there. You end up like saving a lot in the end.
What are the is there better said, is there a profile of the kind of clients you have? If I understood correctly, let's say, your services are for individuals. What kind of person is looking for your service? And let's say, what are their concerns? What do they want to improve?
Well, it's actually not just for individuals. That's our focus group, but also able to help like small businesses for sure. There are very different profiles you can have here. We already have all sorts of different clients here. Most of them, like, it will be easier for us to do will be someone that's wants to be a nomad, open to the idea, and you can just optimize anything. If you're flexible to go anywhere, anything is possible, basically. But of course, that's not the reality for most people. Some people have jobs that are more restrictive, like if you're a doctor, if you're an engineer. Sometimes you don't have as much flexibility as a programmer, as someone that works with marketing, as a psychologist, or so forth. But as I said, this is a matter of planning, and there even in Europe, there are a lot of opportunities for optimization. If you just some part of your business is restricted at the country you are, it's perfectly legitimate for you to set up a business elsewhere in the EU that could be more interesting for what you want to achieve. Of course, you have to pay attention to some guidelines about how to make sure this business you're incorporating is considered legitimate in the eyes of the tax authorities in your base country. So typically, you'd have to hire like some employee, have an office, create links with the country of incorporation. Cannot be just a paper box, a letterbox type of business. So you could just live in Germany and have your business in Bulgaria and you enjoy 10% corporate tax. So it really depends. Like the main aspect of it, the most important thing is that there is a pain, there is some freedom of yours that's being restricted, and you can just figure out some strategies, some solutions to help you get where you want to be.
I am not an expert in this topic, please. But for instance, I remember, during 2023, reading that and seeing some videos on YouTube that, for instance, I believe that Portugal had become, let's say, a very welcoming country for expats, for people who wanted to move there, for foreigners who wanted to move there, in part to optimize their taxes too. And if I remember correctly, some of the things were changing. Regardless of this example of Portugal, what can you tell us? Let's say we are starting 2024. Which do you think, let's say, which trends should we expect in this kind of, in the area of global mobility? Which do you think are going to be the countries that will be like the hottest in the sphere? Some that you maybe see that there will be negative changes. What can you tell us about it?
So there's quite a bit of hype about Argentina at the moment. Especially since Milei got up, and if he's able to achieve this single promise he made, I think Argentina is going to be in a very good path. So just by moving away from the peso and adopting the dollar, not especially in geopolitics, but I would imagine would solve most of the problems Argentina has at the moment. And that would make it very convenient for nomads, especially people that are like earning dollars. That's the global currency, of course, to be living there. It's already a very good country, very good people. Even I was there last year in February. We already have this conversation, Federico, but just open up for everybody that's listening here. I was in the best neighborhood in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, paying less than I'll pay like anywhere else in Brazil, for example. I was paying $400 for an apartment that was like just behind the metro, that was near the botanical garden, near like the best restaurants in the entire country, with utilities included. And if you're like in Portugal, even we're gonna be paying more than that for a room in a faraway location from Porto or Lisbon. So you can get like very high quality of life, very like the weather is better, is more stable than Europe. So I mean, really depends on what you want to optimize. There is no a lot of bureaucracies, not as restrained as a society, and so on. Very cheap, can get very high quality goods for very cheap, leather and anything. So other than Argentina, I think El Salvador continues in a trend to be very stable. I still like to see more. I don't know if Bukele leaves, because El Salvador, a few years back, it was the most dangerous country in the world. Right now, it's one of the safest in Central America. It was a very quick change, and when things change quick, they can just move back very fast as well. But that's something to be observed. We had some clients that went there to El Salvador specifically because of Bitcoin. It's uh, it's getting there. It's still a bit raw. They accept Bitcoin in a lot of places, but still, like, people are not very used to that technology. So maybe now that 1 year has passed, they'll be a bit more comfortable using that. So it might be a bit more convenient, a bit more interesting to be there. Spain, I think it's a very good option now as well in Europe. They have this new nomad visa they're introducing, and with Portugal trying to sabotage it itself by trying to end the NHR, the non-habitual resident regime. Spain shows up as the perfect place to welcome anybody that's out of Portugal.
In your opinion, what are the most significant misconceptions that people have about tax optimization, internationalization, changing your legal residency?
Well, it depends on the type of client that you have. We have clients from different parts of the world. We have European clients and a lot of Brazilian clients, especially because since we are Brazilian, of course, that's where most of the people we know just that recommended us comes from. And a lot of Brazilians specifically, I'd imagine that's could be a common friend all over South Americans, is that when they are leaving their countries, they want to go to first world immediately. So they very typically think about the US, Canada, Germany, countries that in their minds they have everything figured out already, when they're in reality they are in like steep declines. I mean, the US could still make sense, I think, in some places. It's still one of the better places for you to make money, to just make this prepare for the future, I'd say. Still makes sense. But they don't think about high taxation, high cost of living, so they have this very short-sighted view to just, and I mean, it's a good plan because you're in a bad situation, you have a one step forward, you make your life better in every sense, you have more safety, you're not so worried about the future, and then you're able to just consider other options. We had a lot of clients also, they just made this quick decision to just leave to the first place they were able to get a job opportunity, and then realize, wow, taxes are way higher than I thought. And now they're coming to us to just, well, I want to move again. So I think it's like the best strategy is to do it only once and do it right. So it's worth it to just spend like a week or two just really paying attention before you're making a decision. And so you don't need to just like shoot in the dark. I think that could be the better expression. There are a lot of countries that will have this situation. Switzerland is one of the few exceptions to the norm. You still have higher salaries. Taxes can be a bit high depending on the canton that you are. The cost of living is definitely up there, but the cost benefit of all those places, I think that's definitely the winner.
This is a more, let's say, personal, question from the We Are Innovation space, because we are here at We Are Innovation, and me personally, we're great admirers of Estonia. You've lived there. You're also doing a lot of work regarding internationalization. What's your view about Estonia? What they've done, what they achieve? Criticisms you may have. How do you see the situation there?
I absolutely love Estonia. The e-governance system is fantastic. It's like very avant-garde. It makes so that you don't need to be in person for pretty much anything other than getting married or buying an apartment. Otherwise, people will be just day trading like real estate like crazy. So of course, that's not a ideal. So they decided to limit that, and that became like what's the word? This founding stone to a lot of other countries. They set up an example that was like inspired the e-residency system in Lithuania. In Latvia, there was also the first country to introduce a nomad visa, and every month there is a new European country starting a nomad visa as well, because that's very interesting, that's very advantageous. Of course, they want to bring people there, and those smaller countries, and Estonia is definitely a very good example of that. They have this very strong idea that if we are not solving problems, if you're not interesting to foreigners, nobody will come here. We're going to be forgotten, going to be erased from the map anytime soon. which is the opposite perspective that you get in countries like Germany, like the US. It's just like, we are too big. We don't need to do any adjustments. People will still come here. Doesn't matter how bad things get. The line for immigration for the US is going to always be like miles and miles long. And then Estonia, of course, you have like a much more simple setup. You just like start a business, and if you have enough money in this company, you are allowed to like sponsor your own visa to go to the country. Like, just to give a better, more grounded example of that, in Estonia, with 16,000 euros in your company, that's not expensive. It's not like something that you're just gonna like burn. It's something that you have that you can later use to hire an employee, to pay for utilities, to buy equipment for your operation, or to pay yourself a salary even. If you have that amount of money, you're able to sponsor your own visa. You can just go there from pretty much anywhere in the world. In the US, if you want to have uh, EB2 visa, you have to spend on average. I'm not sure if that's the same for Europeans, but for South Americans, you're gonna have to spend something in the realm of $20,000. So pretty much like it's the same realm of the same amount of money that you have to invest, but one is a complete expense and the other one is just something that you have there to open the doors for you. Totally polarized perspectives here about how to treat people, businesses, and so forth. It's a society that's definitely very open to new technologies. There was like the first time I saw a delivery robot was in Tallinn. It's a country that's definitely very kind, very dear to my heart. The reason I left Estonia though is because working for an Estonian company, that's not a very good synergy because Estonia is not a tax haven. It's very easy to do business, very easy to have your life there, very little bureaucracy, but it's not tax haven. So if you're working there, you have 33% social security, which is higher than most Scandinavian countries. It's higher than Finland, it's higher than Denmark, not higher than Sweden. Sweden is still higher than all of those, no. But yeah, and when you add up income tax, you pay 53% taxes. So that was definitely not very good synergy. So I just moved. I went to Serbia for a while, I went to Romania for a while, I went to Bulgaria for a while. And it's absolutely great, especially at the time. Corona was still happening. That was before the vaccines even. But there are some countries that are starting to give some restrictions. Estonia, for the most part, in the beginning of the pandemic, was completely open. It felt like the pandemic never happened, actually. Everything was open. People were walking around without masks. So you can actually feel like properly free there. They had something in their constitution. I cannot really give the exact line and exactly what it said, but basically it meant that the Estonian government could not impose any laws that would restrict Estonians' freedom. So for that reason, you don't have any of the mandates. But of course, eventually there was like enough pressure from the EU, they started to have to fall in line. So a lot of my nomadism during Corona was based on which country will make my life easier. So I went to Romania, was widely open. I went to Bulgaria, I was able to live a normal life. In Serbia, same thing, didn't need to do tests to for not always like that, of course. There are just moments that some of the countries are more restrictive, they're less restrictive. And I was just switching around until like I had like the perfect combination of factors for me. So going back to Estonia. So yeah, it's a very good country. I definitely recommend it a lot, especially when you're starting out. Very good cost of living. Tallinn, it's astonishing. It's so beautiful. Estonians are great people. There are way more welcoming than I thought they would be. I would imagine they would be very cold and distant, and like a South American. A lot of Northern Europeans, they pass this image of being distant and cold, So I was already prepared for that, and but they were just normal people. They just like not different from like most of the Balkans.
You were mentioning, your, let's say, changes of environment during the pandemic. And related to that, and then you were mentioning about being a nomad and doing trying to adapt to find new places, places that were better, more open. In general, trying to forget about the pandemic. What challenges have you faced living as as a digital nomad, and which also positive experience can you highlight about it?
Hey, by the way, sorry for opening up this fresh wound of the pandemic. I didn't mean to just give this shell shock to anybody listening to it. But yeah, I mean, being a nomad has a lot of advantages when it comes to bureaucracy and costs also, because you don't need to apply for visas anywhere. That saves a lot of time, and you can just go buy a ticket and be wherever you want. If you don't like the cold of like Warsaw at winter, you could just take a short flight to Cyprus and to Athens and enjoy early spring weather, for example, like 12, 18 degrees. There's nothing wrong with that. Just a matter of just, knowing what's out there and just making your decisions based on it. Um, Georgia was a very nice country that I've been to. It allows you to stay 1 year visa free, so it's very convenient. Because when you're traveling so much, eventually you can be a bit tired. Just want to be there in a single place and just, focus on whatever else other than travel planning. It's best to be a bit more minimalistic because you're like traveling so often. So of course, basically you have to carry your entire life in your suitcases. So for example, you should like restrict yourself to like 2 pairs of shoes instead of having like one for every occasion. You should have more flexible like clothes that fit different occasions than just like one specific scenario, just like a black tie type of or cocktail. So yeah, for a lot of people, this could be a bit challenging. For me, was not that big of a deal. Um, for me, what's the trickiest part is just the distance from my family. My family is there in Brazil, in Rio. But weirdly enough, since I became a nomad, it was easier to be in touch with my family than when I was living in Portugal. I don't have to change my vacations, for example, because of that, because my work travels with me. I just need my laptop, a microphone stand, the internet, and electricity to be able to work. So I could be like in the middle of the boat, sailing the Atlantic if I wanted to. With Starlink, especially, it's easier than ever to live this type of lifestyle. And at the same time, I could spend like several months in Brazil without getting tax liability. So I could stay about 4 or 5 months in a year. So that I mean, of course, everybody has different like, oh, I want to spend 12 months a year with my family. That's fine. For some people, like 4 might be enough. It's enough for me, for example, to spend Christmas with my family, to be my sister's birthday. My cousin was getting married. I was there, was able to be there for her. Easter, Mother's Day, or New Year's Eve. It's fantastic in Rio. I was there last year, not last year, no, 2022. We're still in January, so it's still like a bit fuzzy what year we are. But yeah, it's you need to adjust a few things, of course. It's not the same as just being there for them the whole time, but still, I'd say it's the best next thing. And a lot of people also think, going back to the earlier question about misconceptions, that you need to be a millionaire to live such as a lifestyle. That's not true. It's actually cheaper than just sitting somewhere and just paying taxes. If you were to just calculate, let's say most countries, let's say in Europe, for example, we're probably paying more than 20% on taxes. Being very, very generous, I think. Probably some places are paying 30, 40%. But let's just think 20. 20 of everything that you earn, try to multiply that by 12. That is probably already enough for at least 50% of the people that listen to this right now to just pay for all those expenses with traveling, to just be in a sunny place when the weather is bad and where you are. And the more you travel, you also get some membership points with the airlines that you're flying to. So if you try to concentrate in the same alliance, it doesn't need to be always say Lufthansa. Lufthansa is part of Star Alliance. So if you travel with Aegean from Greece, with TAP from Portugal, you're still getting like the membership points. You're still concentrating your miles in the same place. And then you can get like some upgrades. You can just fly business class without paying extra for that. Um, so yeah, uh, if you're organized enough, that's a lifestyle that forces me to be very organized with my. I try to not unpack my suitcases. I have some separators so I can just Like in 3 months, I can just be in a totally different country without having to worry so much about things. I know exactly where my stuff are. So there's like some training that you need to do, basically. Some not training like, oh, I need to take a course before I become a nomad. No, but some adjustments that you're gonna have to make along the way. And that's different for most people. Depends on exactly what do you consider it's an essential for you. So, for example, I travel with like a large package of tea bags because I really love tea. So that takes way too much space in my luggage. It's totally unnecessary. I could just buy more tea the place I go, but there are some specific tea brands that I meet along the way. I'll have a lot of them for Argentina, by the way. Yeah, like there was like this. I don't remember exactly the brand, but it was just like about like one of each of the boxes, and just have a lot of them with me at the moment. Some of those small things that I really want to not, I don't want to let go. But yeah,
How do you see the future of digital nomadism and remote working evolving? And which role is Settee going to play in this future?
there's so many things to be taken into account. It might feel overwhelming for a lot of people to do this planning. Like, where do I start? How do I prepare myself to become a nomad? I mean, the only thing you need is actually your passport and just a backpack, and then whatever you want to carry with you. We can help you by figuring out what's the country that's gonna. If you like warm weather, of course, it doesn't make a sense to recommend you to go to Estonia. So we can really tailor this planning, this strategy for you in a way that you're going to be less inconvenienced by some minor things. You can just be with the type of people. If you're like a party person, there are a lot of places that will be like better for partying. If you want to be more quiet in a more family oriented place as well, of course there are places like that, sometimes in the same country, in the same neighborhood, in different cities. So that's definitely something that we can help with. There's also like a lot of travel guides everywhere that just getting more popular, that you could just follow, read about it, get informed about the country that you want to do. Nomadism, I think, is also a very good tool as a transition period. If you're not a person that wants to be traveling everywhere, you could just use it as species as a sabbatical. So you're gonna leave your country, but you don't know exactly because you've never been anywhere else, never lived anywhere else. You could just do that to sample it, to just get a feeling about how it is to live in, say, Greece. You lived in France your whole life. Would I adapt to live in Portugal for a while? The better way to do it is just stay there for a month or two and just see how you adapt, how do you adjust. If you feel comfortable with that, if you don't, you're not married to that solution. You can just pack your things again and just choose another Airbnb somewhere else. And eventually you get a better feeling about what you really, really want to do and what you really wanted to achieve.
And finally, Danilo, how do you balance the ethical considerations in advising clients on minimizing taxes and bureaucracy while ensuring legal compliance, of course?
Yeah, that's the thing about being able to be flexible about your strategy, because what might not be legal in a particular country is legal somewhere else. I mean, of course, depends on what you do. Murder, of course, is going to be illegal anywhere. But just to give an example, alcohol in Saudi Arabia is illegal, but of course, widely accepted in Europe. But marijuana, for example, is illegal in other countries, but some places are a bit more tolerant for that. Homeschooling, the same thing. Some countries will allow it, some countries won't. Gun ownership, and so forth. So you can just really cherry pick exactly what country going to suit your needs. And then it comes for business. For example, let's say Brazil. If you have a crypto-based business, Brazil expects you to declare every crypto transaction you make, which is like accounting nightmare. But if you could just have a company somewhere else, maybe it's not tax optimized, but at least you don't have to spend so much time doing this part of the business. This bureaucratization of having the company in a country that's more interesting, the laws are more favorable to you, could make sense. Be it in the business side or the personal side, you can just evaluate what better fits your needs.
Thank you very much, Danilo, for your time. We really appreciated this interview, and I hope we can talk again soon. These topics are really fascinating, and you're doing an amazing job. And you really, let's say, know your trade. You have been traveled a lot. You're a perpetual traveler in a way. So really, you know what you're talking about, which is also very important. Thank you also, everybody, for tuning in today to this episode of the We Are Innovation podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please remember to subscribe on your preferred platform. Also, you can find us and follow us on YouTube for even more content. And we're looking forward to connecting with you again in the next episode. Until then, keep innovating and expanding your horizons.
Thanks for watching this episode of the We Are Innovation podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. To know more about We Are Innovation, visit weareinnovation.global.